30 years ago, Gary, Indiana was declared the murder capital of the U.S. Following the example of other cities, Gary sued gun makers and sellers for their part in fueling the city's violence. As Jeffrey Brown reports, Gary's case is now the last one still active as this industrial city works to get a handle on gun violence.
At Daniel Hale Williams Elementary in Gary, Indiana, graduating fifth graders were receiving end-of-the-year awards. Amid the celebration, the ceremony's guest speaker offered a warning of sorts, one with echoes of her own experience growing up here.
Being excited for middle school is a very important thing, but a couple of things happen as you get older. You change, you meet new people.
By the time Aaliyah Stewart was the age of these kids, she had already experienced the horrific toll of gun violence.
With Anthony, I was 7, and my brother was like our world. His smile would light up an entire room, and a fight broke out, and the story goes that he got out to break up the fight and was shot in the head. So gun violence is something that you really don't pay attention to until it becomes like a reality at your door.
And then it happened again.
Yes, almost. 7 years later, my brother James was killed. James was 20 and I was 13.
In this community, it was more easy to get a gun than maybe a fresh tomato.
Brian Evans is deputy chief of the Gary Police Department. He joined the force in 1994, the same year the media declared the city murder capital of the U.S., with a homicide rate almost 9 times the national level.
I've had days back then where we've had as many as 5 homicides in one day. Most of it fueled by drug and then gangs for drug territory.
The explosion of violence came after a long decline for Gary. Founded as a company town at the turn of the last century, U.S. Steel's Gary Works employed about 30,000 people at its peak. While it's still one of the largest steel mills in the U.S., today it employs some 4,000. That decline, accompanied by white flight, cut Gary's population by more than half, leaving an estimated 10,000 abandoned structures, and a much less racially diverse community, today more than 80% black. And more than a third of Gary's residents live below the poverty line.
Those jobs dried up and went away, leaving a big economic void here in the city that couldn't be filled as fast as they left. And so we were affected by that, which ultimately affects everything.
Including the crime rise.
Absolutely, absolutely.
While Gary struggled to police its way out of gun violence, the city also tried another approach, one with national implications. In 1999, Gary and other cities decided to pursue a sweeping new legal strategy to sue gun sellers and manufacturers for not preventing illegal sales. Well, nearly 25 years later, that suit has yet to play out fully in court, and now it appears it may never.
House Bill 1235 is the continuation of a long-running effort to remove sort of the last final lawsuit against gun manufacturers that has been pending.
This past March, the Republican-led Indiana legislature passed and Republican Governor Eric Holcomb signed a bill that limited who can bring legal action against the gun industry. Now only the state, not municipalities like Gary, can sue. And the law was made retroactive to exactly 3 days before Gary filed its 1999 lawsuit.
It's insulting, to say the least, that this legislative body would make a determination about a lawsuit when that is the role of the judicial branch in the state of Indiana.
Democrat Reagan Hatcher represents Gary in the Indiana General Assembly. You are a legislator. One of the arguments, of course, is that the legislature in a democracy is where these public issues should be addressed, rather than the courts.
I don't disagree with that, and I think that is what the legislature is for. However, I disagree with the fact that it was made retroactive and it was a law that was specific to one lawsuit.
Is there a racial dynamic at play?
I don't know what else could be in play right now except for a racial dynamic, a targeting of Northwest Indiana, a targeting of the people who have made a determination that this is a lawsuit that is important to this community. Most of our Republican representatives are in rural areas. And so when we talk about inner city crime, it's hard for them to understand the impact of that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House.
Republican Representative Chris Jeter, who authored the bill to kill the lawsuit, didn't respond to an interview request. But Lawrence Keene, who represents the National Shooting Sports Foundation, the trade association for the firearm industry, told us Gary's lawsuit unfairly targets legal gun sales.
Gary's case is the last of some 40 lawsuits filed beginning in the late 1998, 1999 timeframe, seeking to blame the industry for the criminal misuse of lawfully sold firearms. It has no merit.
Keene points out that nearly 30 states have laws similar to the one Indiana just passed, shielding the gun industry. And that in 2005, President George W. Bush signed a law giving the gun industry broad legal protection from lawsuits.
In essence, that means that the firearms industry is shielded from being held responsible in courts in ways that other industries are not.
Well, I disagree with the premise of your question. The difference is no other industry had been attacked with lawsuits like the firearms industry, and that's why legislation was necessary to stop these frivolous lawsuits. No other industry is held responsible for the actions of criminals. No one would think to sue Budweiser for drunk driving accidents.
I would say this is more akin to the opioid issues.
Rodney Pohl is the city attorney for Gary.
If a doctor prescribes opioids to somebody that they know needs opioids, totally legal. But if you have a doctor that's overprescribing and you have companies that are pushing doctors to overprescribe or prescribe to individuals that may not necessarily need it, now all of a sudden you have an opioid epidemic where people are addicted to them.
While these arguments go on, gun violence persists, even as the number of homicides has fallen more than 50% since the mid-90s.
This is the operations center where we can view multiple cameras all over the city.
Deputy Police Chief Brian Evans points to new surveillance efforts like this real-time crime center and better coordination with other law enforcement. But also making his job harder, in 2022, the state ended a requirement that people in Indiana obtain a permit to carry, conceal, or transport a handgun.
Before, we could legally ask if you had a gun permit, if you were legally able to have the gun. Not now. We don't have that right. Matter of fact, we don't even have a right to encounter you just because of the gun.
The steel mill's directly back that way.
As for Aaliyah Stewart, she's focused on the continuing realities for many in Gary.
My brother and his friends, this was the meetup spot.
Now 23, she's channeled the grief from the deaths of her two brothers into a nonprofit focused on empowering young people and preventing gun violence.
How prevalent are guns in the life of the young people you're working with?
If I put 10 kids in here and said, how many of you have had a loved one killed to gun violence? 9 of them are gonna raise their hand.
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. It's their reality. It's their truth. I try to be that beacon of light, beacon of hope, providing an opportunity, a space to be theirself, somewhere to come where they have someone that looks like them, acts like them, and understands where they come from.
While efforts like Aaliyah's go on, so does the city's lawsuit, at least for now. Both sides will be back in court later this month, arguing whether the state's new law will in fact end Gary's nearly 25-year-old case. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Jeffrey Brown in Gary, Indiana.